The Odyssey. No one should be surprised when they receive multiple Oscar nominations and multiple Oscar victories in multiple categories. That's what I'll be getting into today with my nerdy review of The Odyssey. What's good, good people? Welcome back to the podcast, the Silly, Nerdy, and Wordy podcast, and the channel here on Crewboy Productions. This is episode 121, my nerdy review of The Odyssey. Spoilers are ahead. I hope all of you are doing very, very well and glad to be back to do another episode for you as I'll be talking about this new film, The Odyssey. It is written by Christopher Nolan. He also adapted and wrote the screenplay for this Odyssey film, directed the film, produced the film, so his handprints are all over this film, as they always are in every Chris Nolan film. And overall, I enjoyed this film. I had a great time with it. I had two screenings. First, on the opening day, I saw it at IMAX. Then the next day, I saw it at a Dolby Theater. Great experiences, but I'll have to say I give the slight edge to the Dolby experience. I enjoyed that a little bit more, possibly due to the sound of a Dolby Theater. Really enjoyed the film. And the story overall, the structure of this story, really enjoyed it from start to finish in the way it was going. Christopher Nolan really took us on a journey of this film and all the characters, and everyone just fits so well. Even the people that had limited screen times that were good. There's great performances all around in this film. And the way the film started, I thought that was a great choice on how it started, with the bard, which is portrayed by the rapper, singer, songwriter Travis Scott. He is the one that's standing on the table, that's pounding the stick and telling the story of Odysseus. That is him that you see and hear. But aside from that, the way just telling the story, starting the story off like that and showing images and the flashbacks of that, really great choice on how the film started. As I'm not going to go in any particular order, but again, just the structure of the film, start, middle, end, and the journey we went on with Odysseus and his crew and everyone else involved. I just really love what was happening. And then the ending, the climax, man, it felt so earned once we got to the ending. So let's talk about the ending. Once Odysseus got back to his home in Ithaca, I like the choice, the story choice of going home and not expecting this big homecoming. He took the advice of his commander from the beach when he talked to his dead comrades, of not expecting that, going and assessing the situation, seeing what's happening, gathering information, not going as himself. He went as a beggar, seeing his son as an adult for the first time and not telling his son that, and holding that back and being proud, assessing all of that. So great job with the story choice. And then when he eventually reveals himself, it feels so much earned and so much work went into that moment where he's fighting and then he gets to Penelope, which is portrayed by Anne Hathaway. So really, really great in the structure of that. And just the climax of that, when you're in Act 3 in the hall, where he is the last one, he says, I want to try the challenge. And he strings the bow together. Of course, that's flashback from the beginning. He shoots the arrow between the axes, and then he's revealed, and then the fight just goes on. And everything goes off from there in terms of the climax. But everything that happened prior to that, leading up to that, was just very well executed, structure and story-wise. So I love the journey that we went on with Odysseus and all the choices that Christopher Nolan and his writing team did leading up to that moment, including the music of that moment, the score with Ludwig involved. So really excellent in how the ending ultimately came to be. Now, also within the story, talking about the flashbacks. I love how those were incorporated and how it was executed throughout this entire film. I never felt like it took you out of it. I think it was seamless within the story structure. So going back in the past, then going to the present, I like how that was happening each time it did it. And it just kept the story moving. Sometimes when you do flashbacks, it takes you out of the story. It messes you up a little bit. But this, the way it was done in this film, it was done right and just flowed with the story. I just like what they did, the execution of the flashback. And then also some production things as I'm moving forward when they're in Troy, at Troy, in the horse. And they're in there and they're once the horse is there, you see them there for a couple of days. And just when they're showing the images and the shots of them in the horse, all of them standing on top of each other, I have questions. How are they filming those scenes when they're in the horse? What type of structure are they in? And how is the camera getting in there to film them and get it in those positions along with the water, like I guess a tank or something? I'm just very interested and very curious how they went about filming that when they're in the horse. That's something I'm just very interested in. Possibly, hopefully, they'll show that on the Blu-ray later this year. Another thing is, I want to give props to the sound department, particularly in the cave when Odysseus and his crew get to that island where they ultimately go and they follow the sheep and then they're in there for a couple of days and nights with the Cyclops, with the giant. And the particular part I want to focus in is when they take the log, they put the fire on the log, and the Cyclops is sleeping, and they go and put the log in the Cyclops' eye. And then once that happens, the noise and the sound that's happening there. When I was in the Dolby Theater, you really felt that. So really shout out to the entire sound department. I felt it in the IMAX theater too, but just that scene there when that was happening, it was so immersive when that was happening. But the sound, of course, overall with the rest of the film as well. But that was really a highlight for me for the sound design for this film. Just a really immersive experience when his eye got poked out. And speaking of sound, let's talk about the score. Enjoyed the score from Ludwig. He is the composer on this film. And prior to the release of the film, there was a production featurette released with Christopher Nolan talking and Ludwig talking. I'll link it in the description, talking about the score. But the thing I want to focus in on, he said he wanted to sound a little bit different, not use the same thing. So there was no orchestra used here. There was a choir used. I saw that, but they used two instruments from that was used in ancient Greece in those times. So the two instruments they used was a aluos, which is a flute-like instrument, and then a lyra, which is a string-like instrument. And you hear that after seeing this film, and then I went back and watched this production featurette, and then hearing those instruments and remembering that from seeing the film just really, really brought it full circle. But just the sound and the score of the film was really well done. It's particularly when you hear the vocalists, you hear the choir, as they talked about it in the production featurette, they really got those emotional beats, those slower moments in. And I saw in the credits, so shout out to just the whole choir there, the tenors, the altos, the sopranos, the basses, all of those, and the person conducting that choir, they all sounded really good, particularly in the second and third act when you really got to hear them. That just really stood out to me. I enjoyed hearing the choir as well as the soloist. Really great job with that. Now, let's talk about some performances. I enjoyed many performances, and there are a lot of A-list people here in this film, and they all had some great moments. You have Anne Hathaway, Matt Damon, Zendaya, John Berthal, Tom Holland, Lupita Nyong'o, Charlize Theron, John Leguizamo. Just, the list goes on and on and on, but they were all great. I want to point out some particular moments where it just really stood out to me. First, let's start with the main lead, Matt Damon. He was great. I enjoyed his performance of all the things that he was doing, the physical things, the emotional moments, him and Anne Hathaway when they were in the bed talking before he left. That moment there, that scene work there, that emotional time there. I like what was happening there. And then Anne Hathaway, she really stood out to me. She had a couple moments. In the third act of the film, this is after Tom Holland's character has gone on his expedition to try to find his father or to see if he's still alive. He eventually comes back. They go into this room, which is really nice and really well lit and shot. But they go into that room and they're having this conversation. And Tom Holland's character is telling her that you need to remarry. This is the plan. And she doesn't want to. What I want to focus on is what Anne Hathaway is doing in terms of what she's saying to him, the choices she was making. I really like what Anne Hathaway was doing there in that conversation with Tom Holland. The other thing is later on in Act 3, we get to where all of the suitors are gathered, that the party is over, and you go into the hall, and Anne Hathaway's character, Penelope, the doors open, and then she starts off her line by saying, "For years, my husband," and then she goes into the line, you've had his food, you've had these parties, you've made a mockery and all this stuff. But as she's standing there, she's holding the bowl. It's a very small, detailed, nerdy thing that probably many people don't really care about, but I do. But the way she was standing there, holding the bowl, just her posture and structure, she was standing firm, standing strong. She was just kind of letting you know, like, I run this is my home, I'm in charge. But just the way and the way she was looking and standing strong with her stance, with her shoulders and everything, before going down the steps, explaining the challenge before it happened with stringing the bow and shooting the bow through the axes. But her stance there in those couple seconds before she came down, that was really, really good in terms of what she was doing there. And then also when John Berthal, when he came on screen at that time, Temecula came, he went to his house. John Berthal plays Menelaus, and he says, "Have a seat," not you, not his mentor, but Tom Holland's character. So they sit. So John Berthal, in terms of what he was doing and his acting choices, that really stood out to me as well. His performance there, sitting at that table, telling the story from his perspective of his father. So I really enjoyed what he was doing there. That the way he was talking, the acting choices he was making, I enjoyed that performance by John Berthal. Also, John Leguizamo, he was the blind man there. Eventually, I love the choices he was making all throughout the movie. I almost didn't recognize him, but I love what he was doing. I thought he was great. Calypso, Charlize Theron, what she was doing was great. A lot of people had limited screen time, but once they got on, it was great. Zendaya, she was great as Athena. Her conversations with Odysseus, and then the emotion she was showing as Odysseus was talking to Penelope, and they were reaching out, holding each other's hand. She was crying in her eyes, and as he was apologizing and acknowledging what he's done, but she didn't say anything. But the emotion she was showing there was pretty good, and then her lines she had previous to that, earlier in the film, was good as well. Even if you had limited time, limited lines, even Lupita, loved what she was doing as well. She was playing two roles, so that was pretty nice as well. A lot of great performances in this film. Another thing to get into, as I stayed and watched the credits to the end, because I continued to do that, but I noticed that they have filmed in many, many places, including the United States. There was a Los Angeles unit. There was an Italian unit. there is a Morocco unit, there is an Iceland unit, there is a New Zealand unit, and there's a Scotland unit, and there's a Greece unit. So they filmed in all of those locations. One of the things that really also stood out to me is when they got to the island where they met Circe. And when Circe turned Odysseus' men into pigs temporarily, that was an interesting and weird scene to watch. But within the house, I want to shout out the production designer, which is Ruth V. Zhang, and the set decorator, which is Larry Diaz. That stone house, the details of all of that stuff that was in there, the pots, the pans, the fruits, the little things and the bigger things in the background of that house. So somebody has to, also the set buyer, they also have to purchase those things and place those things and make it look like it's worn in, like somebody has been there. And then the whole scene where they're eating profusely and as they're turning into animals, that was such a unique experience to see that. But again, the production design of that particular house, I enjoyed it. There's also a lot of great cinematography shots. The way this film looked, it looked really, really nice. There's so many great things. Aerial shots. I saw there's some helicopter pilots that was credited as I was looking at the credits. So shout out to the director of photography, Hoyte van Hoytema. Cinematography, just really great shots all around in all the different countries that I mentioned that they went to. It just filmed look really, really good. But I will say that a lot of Christopher Nolan's films, at least the ones that I've seen, the cinematography always seems to look really, really good, in my opinion. And then I want to also talk about, I mentioned some stuff in the opening in terms of Oscar nominations and potential Oscar victories. Now, Academy Awards is not something I really talk about. I'm fully aware of them. But after seeing this movie, I am very confident. I think it's going to win a lot of awards. It's going to get nominated, whether it's Best Picture, Best Director, Best Supporting Actor, Best Supporting Actress, Best Cinematography, Best Sound Design. I think it's going to get many nominations in some, if not all of those categories. Maybe some categories I'm not even mentioning. I feel like they're going to get nominated in those categories and possibly win multiple, maybe sweep. I think also, even though the movie hasn't even come out yet, Dune Part 3 will also be in the same category in terms of the multiple nominations and victories, but that's later on in December of 2026. But I just wanted to mention that because I think this film is going to get a lot of Oscar buzz. It's not something I talk about, but it is worth mentioning because this film is just that good. I enjoyed this film from start to finish. It's definitely Blu-ray worthy for me. It's just great filmmaking. It's a good story. It's a good take on the story. And then all the filmmaking elements in terms of the action and the cinematography, the acting choices, the visual effects, special effects, practical effects, and then everything else, the stunts involved, using the people in the background, and just all the different filmmaking choices involved by Christopher Nolan and his entire team and the entire crew. It was just really well done. I really had a great time with this movie. I was very, very much looking forward to this movie and those other blockbuster Marvel and Dune and other films, but this one was very high on the list, and we'll see what it does when Oscar time comes around. What did you think about this Odyssey film? Are you going to go see it? Were you excited about it? Let me know your thoughts. Did you like it? Did you not like it? And if you didn't like it, give me one of the things that you didn't like about this movie. Give me something that you did like about the movie, whether it was story-wise or production-wise. Let me know your thoughts in the comments here. And if you like these type of nerdy breakdowns about films, subscribe to the channel here on Crew Boy Productions. And subscribe to the Silly, Nerdy, and Wordy podcast wherever you get your podcasts. Subscribing is free. And I'm also on TikTok at Nerdy Podcaster 124 and Substack at Nerdy Podcaster as well. The podcast goes there as well as written blog material. That is all I'm going to have for you today. And I hope all of you guys have good vibes for the rest of your day. And until next time, we will talk soon.